fake impeachment and all that you will get in a very comprehensive bulletin that is KTN Prime. A very good evening. My name is Wilson Mburu and welcome.
That's right. Today the president literally stopped traffic, and of course we do have some developments from Makueni County for you. They're deciding to impeach the governor. All this coming up right now. I'm Nancy Kachingira. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. Let's begin with the highlights.
The power of MCAs. Kivutha Kibwana impeached at last.
Masaa matatu hakutuambiwa chochote, hatukufungua mdomo. Sasa hata nashindwa nilikuwa nimeenda kufanya nini?
Away with the West. Uhuru's tough rhetoric as he makes grand return.
It was vested with such a power, and the first ground of appeal is therefore rejected.
The judges have spoken. Why hostile ICC witnesses must be compelled to testify. And caught on camera. Daylight robbery all captured on tape. Well, as we told you earlier, that President Uhuru Kenyatta is back in the country, and it was a day filled with excitement and mad traffic.
That's right. And of course, this is a momentous day that we'll be telling you about in just a little bit. But let's begin, actually, with some late developments coming out of Makueni. The county's governor, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, has been impeached just in the last few hours.
30 members of the county assembly voted to remove the governor over what they called lack of accountability.
10 others voted in his favor, but as Catherine Amwanto now reports, Kibwana insists that he is staying put.
Makueni County Assembly members made good their threat that has been hanging over the governor for months now. 35 MCAs voted for his impeachment while 10 voted against, effectively making Kivutha the third governor to be impeached by MCAs. The MCAs cited what they claimed was Kibwana's lack of accountability.
Money that was meant for planting seedlings in the whole county actually spent about 87 million. And when we investigated through another committee of the assembly, we found that actually no seedlings were planted, and that money, the 87 million, went to waste. There's also 40 million shillings for emergency fund. That money, went away.
Allegations that Professor Kibwana denies.
I think we have only one final solution, which is to take back this government to the people. We tell them that you elected us, thank you very much. We can't work together because there are people who are stopping us from working together. We would like this county government suspended so that you can have fresh elections after 90 days.
The strained relations between the Makueni governor, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, and the county assembly members reached its boiling point on the 24th of September. When chaos erupted outside the Makueni County Assembly between Kivutha Kibwana's supporters and MCAs, resulting in 5 people being shot. The meeting was said to have featured discussions to have the governor impeached for alleged corruption. The County Assembly Forum 2 weeks ago tasked a reconciliatory team to smooth out the situation between the governor and MCAs, but from the latest development, the task force appears to have failed miserably. Kivutha Kibwana insists that he is not going anywhere.
If the people of Makueni told me to resign, I got delegations from all the constituencies or wards, and they said that they didn't have confidence in me. I would resign immediately.
Now it is up to the Senate to decide Kivutha Kibwana's fate. 4 ministers of the Makueni County government have also been impeached. Catherine Amwanto, KTN.
Big Q in association with Total Quartz.
Well, that story actually forms the basis of our big question tonight. This is big news coming out of Makueni County after the push and pull between the governor and the MCAs. And we are asking you, do you support the move by the MCAs to the Makueni MCAs to impeach the governor Kivutha Kibwana? Do you support the move by the Makueni MCAs to impeach Governor Kivutha Kibwana?
Yes, it does appear as if the troubles in that county are far from over. Well, we'd like to hear from you this evening on whether you think this was the right move, and you can do that by tweeting us at Kachungira, at Wilson_Mburu, and at KTN Kenya. You can also send us an SMS on 22155. Start with a yes or no so that we're able to compile your thoughts into a poll result that will give you towards the end of this bulletin.
Total Quartz improves the output of your engine, allowing you to go further with each tankful. Total Quartz, more protection and more kilometers.
Now, if you do live in Nairobi, it might have proved difficult for you to get anywhere in the early hours of today. Let's now go to that story about the president's return from The Hague. Earlier, our senior political reporter, Sam Ogina, was following the morning drama, and he now joins us live from our city centre studios. Hello, Sam. A very tough talking president after his court appearance in The Hague today.
Well, indeed, it actually took the presidential convoy at least 4 hours to maneuver itself from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through Eastlands area to the office of the president at Harambee House. Now, addressing the crowd that had gathered to receive him, the president was quite categorical and hard-hitting, registering his disappointment at the ICC for summoning him, saying that actually the ICC was just trying to set up himself, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, to trap him, given that according to the Rome Statutes that set up the International Criminal Court, defying summons to appear may actually prompt or precipitate issuance of arrest warrants. The president made an epic return to the country from The Hague to a grand reception. Defying protocol procedures, both the president and his deputy rode in the same presidential limousine, posing a security threat to the institution of the presidency. That notwithstanding, the president did not hide his disgust for being compelled to attend the status conference, of which he sat silent throughout the whole session. Uhuru was represented by his legal team in the status conference, vowing not to submit further evidence to the prosecution.
Tumekaa huko, tumekaa kwa meza hapo masaa matatu, hakutuambiwa chochote, hatukufungua mdomo. Sasa hata nashindwa nilikuwa nimeenda kufanya nini. Lakini kile kitu tunajua ni ya kwamba heshima ya wananchi wa Kenya ilibaki ikiwa mikononi ya Mheshimiwa William Ruto hapa Nairobi.
Uhuru says ICC summoning of the country's president was a plot to humiliate and undermine the country's sovereignty. But the president argued that sovereignty remained safeguarded in the acting president.
Uhuru wa Kenya ulipiganiwa na damu. Na uhuru wa Kenya tutaulinda dhabiti.
They told us that this is a personal matter. Now they can see that it is a personal matter to millions of Kenyans.
Jameni, tuache ukikuyu wetu, tuache ujaluo wetu, tuache ukalinjini wetu, tuache ukabila hii bure.
The president's rallying call was that of fostering unity to defeat the country's challenges. Uhuru warned against tribal patronage and cheap politics, saying these are the country's main undoing, hampering growth.
Mimi kama nilikuwa nimeenda, mimi sikuwa na hofu, kwa sababu unajua tunafanya kazi na ndugu yangu na yeye atashikilia. Kwa nini uogope mwenzako? Kwa nini umuogope mwenzako? We have to learn to trust one another. We have to learn to believe in one another. We have to learn that kama iko na ndugu yangu iko na mimi.
Asante kwa kuchunga kiti. Well done. God bless. Thank you.
The two exchanged light moments once they retreated to Harambee House.
Mungu mwema.
Ruto, who was acting president for 2 days, officially handed over the office of the president back to Uhuru Kenyatta. Commercial flight Kenya Airways was the country's equivalent of Air Force One. The KQ flight carried the president in his full presidential capacity, with his aide-de-camp donned in full uniform. Uhuru's flight touched down at 6:30 Thursday morning, and as the commander-in-chief, the president inspected the guard of honor. The 48 hours of power delegated to the deputy president had lapsed on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Samogina, KTN.
Well, he might be back in the country, but it is a wait and see for President Uhuru Kenyatta, and his eyes and mind will be actually focused on the ICC judges in the next 2 to 3 weeks as they deliberate on the verdict that they are going to give on whether to rule in favor of the defense team that is requesting for the termination of the case, and also have not guilty verdict on the accused person, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, and also probably an adjournment as requested by the prosecution's office, and also probably that is report Kenya to the Assembly of State Parties for sanctions until the country fully cooperates with the office of the prosecutor. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now let's take a look at another facet of this story. Amid the joy from the president's supporters, the morning roadside rallies literally brought parts of Nairobi to a halt. Several motorists seeking to get to work were stranded in traffic for hours. Some commuters were actually forced to walk or hop onto motorcycles to get to work. Some schools in the city's Eastlands area had to suspend their classes as a result of the sudden activity in that part of the city. KTN's Patrick Amimo reports.
Right from the airport, it was clear this was going to be an all-day affair, not just for those who braved the morning chill to come here. From the guard of honor that had lined up way before his arrival, to the various groups of traditional dancers who had arrived for the reception. But it was what followed that would bring a busy working day in the city to a screeching halt, as the crowds lined up for the impromptu roadside rallies. Many Nairobians who had hoped to get to work on time or open their businesses had to change plans as the city entered a virtual lockdown.
The jam has been hectic, but at least I must say that I love the president's leadership style. It's excellent.
This road has been blocked for almost 6 hours. You calculate the amount of fuel, calculate the amount of money that has been spent here, and the time wasted. Sincerely, if we want to build our country, if we want to build our economy, we are going to consider the factors which are making our economy to fall down.
The president's convoy spent a minimum of 20 minutes at each stop, and there were at least 7 stopovers in all along the busy Outer Ring and Jogoo roads. The heavy traffic snarl-up spilled over to other major roads, and for some, walking became the easy option to beat the jam. Some schools in the neighborhood closed for the morning, and yes, the pupils also joined the crowds that welcomed home the president. The president's convoy missed by a whisker. This cattle whose herdsman maybe was not aware the head of state was passing. It was not immediately clear whether the crowds were made up of people who had simply taken leave from work or closed their businesses for the morning. But many of the motorists were perhaps hoping that by passing through the potholed Outer Ring Road, the president and his deputy might just get an idea of what residents here have to put up with every morning.
For now, President Uhuru Kenyatta is back in office to deliver on the Jubilee Manifesto, but we are yet to hear word from The Hague. The judges hold the final say on whether the case will be terminated or deferred. Patrick Amimo, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, let's take to the ICC issue. And across the border, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni expressed anger at the decision by the ICC to summon President Uhuru Kenyatta, who missed Uganda's National Day celebrations as a result of those summons. Museveni now wants African countries to review their relationship with the ICC.
Uhuru Kenyatta
Kenyatta was supposed to be here today and yesterday. But the big boys summoned him. So you must come to The Hague. I hear the Kenyan government tried to say, please, why don't you get another date? We already have a summit. They told him that summit is rubbish. Don't care about African summits. The African Union Assembly of Heads of State resolved that no African sitting president should be summoned by that court. This resolution was taken to the Security Council, where there is no permanent member from Africa.
Now, as Africa weighs its options, the court at The Hague will also be trying to figure out what to do with Uhuru's case following the heated exchanges yesterday. KTN Zubaida Koma spoke to some legal experts on what options await the president's case.
When President Uhuru Kenyatta arrived into the country from The Hague, the message he brought with him was one of confidence. Confident that the case against him at the International Criminal Court was on its deathbed. But legal experts say his trial journey may be far from over. After a status conference that witnessed accusations and counter-accusations, Trial Chamber 5B judges have an intro of options they are looking through before they can let him go.
The court, to me, will make decisions on either of the two issues, whether to terminate this case or, agree with the prosecution and adjourn the case.
They will adjourn the matter indefinitely if they are to consider the plight of the victims.
The office of the prosecutor and the victim's lawyer still believe that someone has to pay a price for the deaths of Kenyans during the post-election violence that rocked the country in 2007 and early 2008. And they accuse Uhuru Kenyatta of being one of them. They now want the case against him adjourned until Kenya meets its obligations according to the Rome Statute.
Do we understand correctly that the prosecution is not alleging at this time that the accused has deliberately interfered with the collection of evidence?
There is no evidence of any action or inaction that he has taken or refrained from in the course of the period between our request for cooperation and today.
The President, as the head of state and head of government, is in charge of all these systems and institutions from which the material evidence the International Criminal Court is seeking would be.
Time has a way of erasing so many things. Chief amongst them is evidence, witnesses, documentation. And if you are claiming right now that the head of state is obstructing justice or is in a way controlling state levers, he will do so for the next 5 to 10 years.
Experts say if the judges choose to ignore the option to terminate the case and choose to adjourn it, it will be on the basis of justice for victims.
A price must be paid for the fact that the prosecution does not have the evidence that it needs. But in this case, who should pay that price? Should it be the victims, whose quest for justice has been cruelly frustrated both in Kenya and before this court? Or should it be the accused, who is the principal author of the deadlock in this case?
The day you say you terminate this matter on the grounds being put forth is the day the ICC as a court would be dead completely.
There's still a third option, referring the case before the 122 Assembly of State Parties. But experts say if the case was to take this route, it could be a big win for the Kenyan government.
The majority of the members of the state parties, which constitute the Rome Statute, are from the African Union. And of course we know their stand, that African heads of state should not be tried while they're still in office.
I see Kenya going with the African Union to say we all, get out of the international court system, international criminal, court system, the Rome Statute. I see, sanctions like limitations on travels, economic sanctions.
It is still not clear how this case will go, but in the next few weeks and months, the lawyers and their clients will have their ears trained on the ICC as they await what that big announcement from the 3 judges will be. Zubeida Kome, KTN Prime.
Now, one of the most interesting things about this case is the number of people that the president traveled with to The Hague. And the question that we have been asking ourselves is, was it necessary for the president to travel with so many people? Was there not work at home to be done? Nancy Kachungira is now seated with the Tetu Member of Parliament, Ndungu Githinji. Over to you, Nancy.
Well, that's right, Wilson. Ndungu just came back. He's fresh off the plane. And he definitely was one of those people who did go around with the president today as well.
Indeed.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you both.
My first question, why did you feel it was so important for you to go to The Hague with the president?
Well, I think it's important. Many Kenyans throughout this period where this trial has been ongoing have been visiting The Hague, part of Deputy President's delegation. Several Kenyans from all walks of life have been going, and similarly in this case, many Kenyans, members of parliament, business people, Kenyans from all walks of life, saw fit to take part and escort the president.
But this was just a status conference. It wasn't the end of the trial.
Indeed, it wasn't. I think it was out of the need for all of us in our individual capacity to observe the ongoings at The Hague firsthand, get a sense of the atmosphere in the court, get a sense of the body language of all the actors, because it's important. You know, when you watch it on TV, you don't quite get the full sense of the totality of the experience of what is happening in the court.
All right.
And when you're there firsthand, you actually get to see even the body language, which tells you a lot of the story.
Okay, but let's talk about what was happening back home. On Tuesday, for instance, 4 National Assembly committees couldn't raise quorum because their members were actually in The Hague. Do you think it's justifiable that some of the House business comes to a standstill for this?
No, I think quorum in the National Assembly, be it at the committee level or even in the House, is a matter of participation of members, regardless of where they are. They could be in the country, out of the country. It's not to say that because they went to The Hague, they were unable to raise quorum, because quorum is 9 members in committee, and most committees have memberships of 29 plus. So, if a small delegation from any committee goes to Parliament, goes to The Hague, I am sure there are at least 20 members within the country who would be able to raise the quorum.
But this was the case. 4 of those assemblies actually couldn't meet. In one, there were only 5 people, and one of the reasons that was given is that a lot of the members are at The Hague. So what is the priority here?
Well, I don't have those facts. I don't have the specifics, so I can't comment authoritatively. But the fact remains that there is a lot of interest. This case is specific and interesting to Kenyans at large, even to the National Assembly, because we are watching very closely the ongoings at The Hague and the attitude and the way the case is being prosecuted by the Office of the Prosecutor, because we in Parliament have a lot to say about it. The reason I say this is because you remember that there was a motion being brought before the House to withdraw Kenya from the state parties.
Now, it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because the president did say that this was a personal matter, and he did even go to The Hague as a private citizen and not as the president of Kenya. So how do you reconcile that with what you've just said?
Yes, there's a proper reconciliation. When we view a court that has a particular fixation with Africa and Africans, that court has never tried any other person outside of this continent, and it's meant to be an international criminal court. So either it's a court for the entire world, or it's a court for nobody, because we cannot, as Africans, wish to support a system where we want to play a part as a member of the community of nations in supporting the rule of law and order, but having that rule of law and order only expressed upon us. That is an unjust situation, and whenever we see injustice as members of parliament, we are bound to address it.
All right, let's talk about the return. You were on the road show. I don't need to tell you that it did cause a lot of traffic. I'm going to refer to a tweet here from 3 Route. They say, I think it's only Uhuru working today. All of Nairobi's workforce is in jam. And actually recently, Bloomberg reported that Nairobi loses about 50 million shillings a day to traffic. Now that's normal traffic. So today we probably lost a little bit more than 50 million shillings.
I tell you what, it's not today that we've lost a lot of money. In fact, every time the deputy president steps on a plane to go to The Hague, we lose millions of shillings of productivity, because who is going to compensate us for the deputy president's time and his productivity? Who is going to compensate Kenya for the president's time and productivity and the money that we spent going to The Hague to sit there for 3 hours in the court and not be told anything, not be told why he's there, not be told anything? I mean, he could easily have been represented by the council. Why the office of the prosecutor and the judges themselves saw fit to call the president all the way there? I think it tells us a story that there was certainly elements within the system who wanted to humiliate the president as the president, who wanted to subjugate Kenya's sovereignty to the court, to the International Criminal Court, which would have been an international precedent. And I think the president, in his singular move of statesmanship, his selfless act of delegating his presidential authority to the deputy president, denied them that opportunity and gave Kenyans, the premium. He actually put a premium on being a Kenyan.
Yes, but speaking of Kenyans, there are also a group of Kenyans who are victims in this case. And in the demonstrations we saw today, some people were holding up placards that said Hatutaki ICC. I'm sure even in Tetu, in your constituency, there are people who were affected by the post-election violence and who do want to see justice. But
Indeed.
If not ICC, then what? Are we fighting hard enough to make sure that the victims do find justice?
You see, one of the arguments that is being posited is that, we must prosecute this case because of the victims. But seeking justice for the victims does not mean denying justice for innocent suspects, because we have to, proceed along the lines of presumed innocence until guilt is proven. The office of the prosecutor, Bensouda herself, said she has no evidence. So the charges cannot stand. So how do we continue prosecuting a case in seeking justice for victims?
But what other avenues are available for the victims?
By trampling on the rights of innocent accused. That cannot be allowed to stand in any civilized society.
True.
In South Africa, for example, after 30 odd years or several years of oppression of the blacks by minority white rule, when the opportunity came for justice and recrimination, the entire world, and particularly the Western world, pushed for truth, justice, and reconciliation. They wanted a reconciliatory
I need us
form of
to
justice.
wrap this up, but not before I ask you. You've definitely shown your support for Uhuru. You went all the way to The Hague. But what are you doing for the victims in your own capacity?
What we would want is to ensure that through Parliament.
What are you doing right now?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
As I say, what we want in Parliament is to ensure that all the victims who are displaced, internally displaced people, would be returned to their place of origin. Compensation should and must be paid. I think the government has already done several things toward that end through the presidency. Several victims have been, returned to their homes. Several victims have been compensated. There's schemes being prepared for purchase of land to resettle IDPs. So I think what we would want as Parliament, and me particularly, is that effort to proceed to its logical conclusion. And I think in the last 1.5 years, a lot has been done in that respect, and whatever remains to be done, I think we'll support.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us this
Thank you very
evening.
much.
That was Nungu Githinji, the MP, Member of Parliament, that is, for Tetu constituency. Now, let's move on with some more stories. I'll hand you back to Wilson Buru for what else is in the news.
Very interesting discussion there with the Tetu Member of Parliament, one of the MPs who actually traveled with the President, telling us that it's all about support. Let's move over to the other case that affects Kenya, and that is the one concerning Deputy President William Ruto. And judges in The Hague have now ruled that the court is perfectly in order to compel hostile witnesses to testify. Ruto had appealed in an earlier decision requiring reluctant witnesses to testify. Edith Kimani has more from The Hague.
It took just 20 minutes for the appeal judges at the International Criminal Court to deliver what has been described as a landmark ruling.
The appeals chamber finds that Article 64(6)(b) of the statute gives to a trial chamber the power to compel a witness before it, thereby creating a legal obligation for the individual concerned. Accordingly, the trial chamber did not err when it concluded that it was vested with such a power, and the first ground of appeal is therefore rejected.
That clinical statement marking the culmination of what has been a back and forth between Ruto's defense team, prosecution, and 9 witnesses. The prosecution witnesses had previously made damning claims against the deputy president, opted out of the case, claiming their testimony had been fabricated. The witnesses claimed the prosecution had encouraged them, but Bensouda's team has raised concern over the timing of their withdrawal. 8 of the witnesses withdrew after their identities were revealed to the defense. The judgment today means that the 9 will now continue to testify.
The appeals chamber finds that Article 64(6)(b) of the statute expressly states that trial chambers have the power to require the appearance of witnesses before the court. The plain meaning of the term require is something more than a voluntary action expected from someone else.
Prosecution will now have the arduous task of building a case with the witnesses it deems hostile. Already, 3 of the 9 witnesses have testified via video link, although prosecution now has the added task of disapproving the witnesses' claims that their testimonies were fabricated.
Now, a Kwale court has withdrawn assault charges against the man who hit former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Governor Salim Mvurya during a rally in the county.
The withdrawal of the charges against Lengo Karisa Mzomba followed an application by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions indicating that Odinga and Mvurya's intention not to proceed with the case.
Mzomba, however, still faces the charge of creating a disturbance in a manner likely to cause a breach of peace.
Lengo Muzomba survived 2 charges of assault when 2 complainants declined to testify against him. Lengo had been slapped with separate charges of assaulting court leader Raila Odinga and Kwale Governor Salim Mvurya, who had earlier indicated they had forgiven his transgression. However, prosecution decided to press on with a 3rd charge of creating a disturbance in a manner likely to cause a breach of peace, citing a recent rise of political hooliganism and thuggery at public meetings in the country, which prosecutor Alexander Muteti said needed to be stemmed to avert lawlessness. The accused person denied the charge of creating a disturbance. His defense pleaded for a lenient bail, arguing that he needed to undergo a medical examination. Kwale resident magistrate Christine Jagi released him on a cash bail of 2,500 shillings and set the next hearing for the 6th of December. Upon release, the suspect voiced his remorsefulness to Raila and Mvurya.
Ile swala limetokea nikiwa na mimi mwenyewe sijielewi kwa nafanya nini. Kadri kama ningejua kwa nikienda pale nitafanya swala kama lile, nisingekwenda pale mimi. Ningefuata shughuli zangu.
So I say sorry for Honorable Raila Odinga and Salim Mvurya, the court and the government at large.
Lengo Mzomba was caught on camera unleashing swift strokes on Raila and Mvurya at a rally in Kinango on the 29th of September. He maintains he was not in his right senses at the time.
Na hilo kurudia tena, siwezi tena kurudia. Hata nikisikia pale pana mkutano mkubwa nitaanza kujiuliza niende pale ama nisiende, maana nishaingia uoga sasa.
Tumpe nafasi mzee Lengo ili aweze kupata matibabu na tusiwe wepesi wa kuanza kutoa judgment kuhusu yeye ama yale mambo mengine yaliyokuwa yametokea.
Basi naomba msamaha wao wakubwa wote hao wanisamehe kabisa, naanguka miguuni kwao, wanisamehe na yote yale.
Ferdinand Mondi, KTN, Kwale.
Time to take a short break now, but not before we remind you of our big question tonight. It's about that very big story, probably the biggest story of the day, where the Makueni governor, Kivutha Kibwana, has been impeached by the MCAs. And we are asking you whether you support the decision or the move by the Makueni MCAs to impeach the governor. Do you support that decision by the MCAs in Makueni to impeach their governor, Kivutha Kibwana?
I'll read a quick tweet here from Patrick Alushula. He says, no, it seems the storms of impeachment will only settle the day all the leaders state that there has been a slight drop in crime in Nairobi city, but many would beg to differ.
Take the staff and owners of the establishment in the clip we are about to show you.
Their experience was captured by over 5 cameras within that establishment in South Sea 2 weeks ago. But 2 weeks later, they still are no closer to finding these criminals who are said to be operating within the area.
KTN's John Alanamo with this exclusive report on a robbery in broad daylight.
It was just a few minutes past 8 a.m. on the 18th of September in South Sea Estate. This lady in red cleans up the front porch of this banking establishment, preparing for the heavy foot traffic that will come this way on this day. Soon her colleagues join her, waiting for the bank to be opened. They all don't know that at the edge of the corridor, their every move is being keenly watched. Soon the store is opened and everybody else files into the banking hall. The lady is left outside to finish cleaning up. From the edge of the corridor, 2 men, a stout-looking man in a suit and a casually dressed man, approach. They hesitate a little, then get in. Before she knows it, another pair of men approach from the near end of the corridor and tell her to get into the hall. Before she can resist, she's threatened with a gun. They quickly lead her off the street and into the establishment. One of them keeps watch, with another still at the far end of the outside corridor also standing guard. Another thief trades places with the one standing outside the bank's entrance. They are now 6 in total. Inside, a security guard hears the lady's calls to open up. When he does, he sees 4 men brandishing weapons, and a struggle to keep them out begins. He calls for help, but by this time the thieves on the other side of the door are halfway in. One of them points his gun into the hall from around the door, and that decides it. They're all inside now. An employee at the banking establishment who is too scared to appear on camera tells us what happened next.
One of our staffs alikuwa ameingia huko ndani. Walikuwa wanataka kuingia huko nyuma ndani. And vile wakashindwa kuingia hiyo mlango yenye iko hapo kando. Wakaona time na iko very limited kwao.
Unable to access a strong room of the bank, the thieves decide to make their escape. Aiming to scare the bank employees into not following them, this man fires off 2 shots at the wall. As the staff members cower behind a pillar, one of the shots ricochets off the wall and hits this man in the leg. They don't steal anything, but based on their actions, the thieves seem to have been watching the opening routines of the bank for a while, knowing them well enough to establish the safest time to access the bank. A bank guarded throughout the day by a pair of armed administration police officers.
Our opening hours, it's a little bit earlier. So my AP wanakuja around 8:45. Na ofisi tukifungua lazima tukuje tufanye cleanness nini, alafu ilibidi sisi tufungue kwanza, alafu na AP wanakuja baadaye.
How they make their escape is even more intriguing. The man standing guard outside, upon hearing the shots, signals to his colleague on the far end with his wrist. Then, one after another, the thieves leave the bank and hop onto 3 boda-bodas that seem to have been waiting for them. These were the last images of the thieves captured by the bank's CCTV on this day. 2 weeks later, at the South Sea border stage.
Sisi kila mtu anajuana na watu wake wa stage kama sisi hapa Akiba wapi.
We ask Mohamed Waswa, the chairman of the border operators at this stage, whether he has heard of allegations that border operators in the area are being used to commit crime. He's quick to defend his area.
Tofauti ikiwa Westland wapi tunasikia, lakini sasa kama hapa South Sea sisi hatuwezi kuwa ndio wenye tunabeba waisi, ni bado tunafanyia hapo kazi. Kila mtu anajua area yake vile inakaa, na mtu mgeni akikuja tunajua huyu mtu ni mgeni.
But when we ask him about this particular incident,
kama sisi hatuwezi kuwajua juu unajua watu huwa wanatumianga wanaweza kuwa wanatumia ile kitu yenye nawapeleka spidi, labda wakuja waharibie kama sisi wana bodaboda.
Even Waswa readily admits that this isn't the first time that border operators in the area have ferried criminals. An interesting lead, but one that, this time around, doesn't seem to have caught the attention of the police.
It's perhaps telling of a wider serious security situation in various suburbs of Nairobi, like here in South Sea, that in the 1 week since a robbery occurred up the road about 300 meters from this border station, not one police officer has come to interview any of the border operators here. That despite the owners of that establishment having visited 4 police stations. John Allen Amu, KTN, Nairobi.
Running the market, despite the fact that real estate has been growing at an encouraging rate. Among other things, its key flagship projects in 3 counties have not materialized as per expectations of many, and its share value at the Nairobi Securities Exchange has plummeted amid falling profits. The management, however, believes that the market is yet to understand its model of doing business, but all is not lost.
With the first real estate company, I think the market and the players within the market need to understand the peculiarities of our financial reporting.
In 2011, Home Africa broke the ground for its flagship Miga project on a 774-acre land in Kiambu County, but it is unlikely to complete it by the target date of 2015, since only 40% of the work is done. Home Africa is also developing Lakeview Heights in Kisumu and Lango in Kwale. With a general feeling that these projects are moving slower than they should, the developer plans to raise additional 1 billion shillings capital through a corporate bond to fast-track their progress.
So this is a good time to be able to raise some debt to significantly push the development.
The real estate firm is also the only listed property developer at the growth and enterprise market segment of NSE, and its 1 year of trade has been discouraging to investors. After listing on July last year at 12 shillings per share, Home Africa has failed to stand the tides of the market, and the share was quoted at 4 shillings and 45 cents today, having hit a high of 25 shillings as soon as it was listed last year.
Once you're in the market, you're in the market. And I think what you do is then you then allow the market participation to price to price your stock. And I think what we're going through is that typical cycle.
Home Africa hopes that as it channels more capital towards its projects, its valuation at the Securities Exchange will grow as investors build confidence around the stock. Charles Gitonga, KTN.
Flame Tree's board has approved plans to list the group's entire issued share capital on the Nairobi Securities Exchange Growth and Enterprise segment by November. The approval clears the last hurdle for the roto tank manufacturer as well as the Zoe line of cosmetics, setting up the Flame Tree Group as the first manufacturing company to list on the James segment. To strengthen its boardroom, the company has appointed George Theobald and Frankie Deddy from Housing Finance as non-executive directors to the board, with Theobald named chairman of the board. Also, the board has endorsed the appointment of Burbage Capital as nominated advisor to the listing Flame Tree Group, with operations in Mauritius, Rwanda, Ethiopia and Mozambique. Hopes the raising sophistication brought about by a growing middle class leads to increase in its market share and bring good tidings to its future shareholders once it's listed. And the government is now seeking to develop a county tourism policy, a move likely to brand each of the 47 counties according to their respective tourism offerings. This is part of a radical shift in Kenya's tourism industry to cut reliance on traditional Western markets and build capacity for domestic tourism. Tourism stakeholders from both the county and national government are now developing a document that will see counties market their own offerings and compete with each other to ultimately bring down the cost for domestic tourists. Currently, most of Kenya's 47 administrative units rely on the national government to develop and execute nationwide tourism strategies, which often package and market Kenya as a destination to the external markets. Nairobi is marketing for conference tourism due to its meeting facilities with Mombasa and the Masai Mara pegged for beach and safari tourism respectively. And now let's move on to a rather interesting story. First it was Kuchi chicken, then came the quails, and now poultry farmers in the country are in a rush to get a hold of a new chicken breed, Kuroiler. Kuroiler is said to be far much better than the local indigenous chicken, growing faster and larger in size and are resistant to diseases. So why is there heightened interest in this Kuroiler chicken breed said to originate from India? Here's KTN's Kamcha Menza telling it all.
Elijah Mwigai is one of the farmers in Nakuru who have already ventured into Kuroiler keeping 6 months ago. This is his flock, comprised of the Kuroiler and the Kienyeji breed. It's hard to distinguish between the two breeds. Farmers say the Kuroiler is more of an ordinary chicken than the grade breed, but better. At 6 months, a Kuroiler cock can weigh up to 3.5 kilograms, unlike the normal 1.5 kilos. Their eggs are visibly bigger.
On the right hand, I'm holding a 2 months old the normal Kienyeji chicken, and on my right hand I'm holding two months old Kuroiler chicken. You can see the difference in size, yeah?
Outside Mary Maina's chicken house, we find a few 4 months old Kuroilers.
The last loud we sold around 200 of them, and we were selling each of them at 400 shillings. They were around 3 months old.
Joseph Mwanyinge has over 700 chicks of the Kuroiler breed after selling his first lot when only 4 months old. The farmers say they got the chicks from Uganda, but not in vain, as the benefits are huge. One can collect up to 270 eggs per year per chicken. They say the breed is a free range and resistant to diseases. Those who have already ventured into rearing the breed highly recommend it and abandoned rearing of the Kienyeji type. But researchers at Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, KALRO, say they still cannot validate the farmers' claims as they haven't done any research on it. The breed is said to be spreading fast, just like the infamous quail.
I may not know about the 10 kilograms. The 10 kilograms as per se, because I've not had imefikisha, but I know they are big. But we may be forced to go down to the ground and redo it, because if farmers are demanding and we are the one researching, we have to do it.
Kamche Menza, KTN from Nakuru County.
All indications are that Denis Solieche's services in the national team, Harambee Stars, for the Morocco friendly are not needed, at least according to coach Bobby Williamson. Oliech, who was not in Williamson's list of players for the Morocco friendly, volunteered to train with the team, maybe with hopes that he could find some space in the travelling squad. But a day before the team's departure, it became clear that Williamson has shut his ears to noisy campaign for Oliech's inclusion.
We've got to try and find a new Dennis, and it's just the way football is, it's just the way life is.
Southampton midfield and English Premier League African Player of the Month Victor Wanyama arrived in Nairobi in time for Friday's departure. Wanyama, who took over the captaincy from Denis Oliech, fell short of campaigning for Oliech's inclusion. Oliech remains Kenya's all-time high scorer, but Williamson has committed to rebuilding the Stars afresh. At the moment, the team lacks firepower up front owing to the withdrawal of Elmerek striker Alan Wanga due to club commitments in Tusker AFC's Jesse Were, who's injured.
And Dennis he still have a lot to give to the national team, so he's still an important player.
The team will hold its final training session Friday morning before traveling to Morocco. Victor Ogale, KTN, Michezo.
And keeping it football, Bandari Football Club could finish the league with a maximum of 39 points. However, that depends on how they play in their remaining 4 matches. Coach Tahir Mohideen says they are targeting between 10 and 12 points from the remaining matches.
Bandari FC has been a pale shadow of how they were during their 2013 season. From 26 matches, the Coastal Boys have won only 5 matches. And as they prepare to welcome Top Fry on the 18th of this month, they understand they have to win to avoid the threat of falling under the red line.
Tumelenga katika mechi zilizobaki pointi 7 hadi yani maximum 12. Kwa hivyo tuna matumaini makubwa baada ya mazungumzo ya kamati yetu ya usimamizi ya timu na wachezaji. 3
of the 4 remaining Bandari FC matches will be at home. An opportunity for the Dockers to use the home advantage to amass more points. KCB and AFC Leopards still have trips down the coast.
Hakuna budi wachezaji lazima wakaze kamba na wajue kwamba haya ni maisha yao na wameona faida za kuchezea yani kujichezea mpira.
Bandari have not won a match since aging out Muhoroni Youth in mid-July. Joshua Kimboy, KTN Sports.
And to some athletics news now, registration for this year's Standard Chartered Nairobi International Marathon closes on the 20th of October, 6 days to the event. The organizers say today that no late registration will be allowed. The local organizing committee chairman, Peter Gitau, announced that they are targeting 25,000 participants this year.
I am pleased to announce that in line with our commitment last year to extend our sponsorship for another 5 years, this year Standard Chartered Bank will invest 91 million Kenya shillings in the organization of the event. Since inception, we have managed to raise more than 88 million Kenya shillings, and the funds have been used to help restore sight to 6,500 children through corrective surgery. This year, our target is to raise 30 million, up from 23 million in 2013.
Since we started running this event, we have never had any doping issues. That means the athletes that normally participate are always clean, and we shall remain clean.
And Nigeria Super Eagles coach Stephen Keshi says his team